Have you ever felt like you're getting trimmed? Like there's things in your life that need to be taken off? Part of the pottery process is not just throwing the pot and creating something like this picture, but it's not finished yet. There's more to be done. At this point, the pottery is leather hard, we call it. That's where it has a texture and a tendency to be still worked with. And so the potter will then trim off that which is a little bit excess. You know, just like in your life and mine, as we go through life, as we develop character, there's stuff that needs to be attitudes, sins that have to be dealt with. Hebrews 12 verse 1. The writer of Hebrews says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let's strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with perseverance and endurance the race that God has set before us. So with endurance, it seems to be a common theme right now. You know, we have to endure this present state of affairs with COVID and different restrictions on our life. But there's stuff that we need to get rid of. I'm sure some people have been cleaning their homes. That's the easy stuff. Cleaning up our emotional lives, our relational lives when we got time to think on our hands. So the potter knows how to feel out and take off that which is excess. You know, there's excess in all our lives. Truth be known, we all have things that we can trim off, and I'm not talking about physical weight. That's always what people point to. But there's more. There's attitudes, behaviors, maybe even customs that you grew up with in your family. And getting rid of them just allows you to be a little bit more streamlined and allows you to be sensitive to the Spirit of God and to be a little bit more balanced. In Romans chapter 12, verse 2, the Apostle Paul talks about how we're not to copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you. We want to be transformed from something clumpy into something a little bit more streamlined. Let God transform you into a new person by the changing of the way you think. And then when we're transformed by the way we think, then we can know God's will for you, which is good, pleasing, and perfect. And so we go through a transformation. When we don't copy the behaviors of the world, when we choose to live differently, God calls it being sanctified, set apart for Him. And we strip off those things that get in the way, those old customs, those old habits. Things that we once thought were important in the light of Christ don't look as important anymore. Remember, as a young potter, the challenge of trying to get the pot just right. Realizing that in throwing, I can never do it perfectly. There's always more. There's the trimming stage. You know, in our life, you accept Christ, you come to the newness of the knowledge of Christ, but there's more. There's really so much more. Getting to know Him and know His ways. Getting to a place where He's done His work on you. You've yielded to the potter. You've allowed yourself to be trimmed up. Ready for the next stage. And that's called drying. Gentle, sensitive drying. And in some cases, getting ready for an addition. Piece of pottery isn't just finished when we trim off the excess. Sometimes God has something more in store, although a bowl is a bowl. And so the potter doesn't really want to add anything to this. He's trimmed it to where he wants, but obviously for a piece like this that has a spout, I mean, you could use it like this, but you could add an appendage. What is an appendage? To me, an appendage is like a gift. I want to gift the piece of pottery with something to make it more useful, just like your life and mine. Apostle Paul talks in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 7 through 11, that a spiritual gift is given to each one of us so that we can help each other. I do this to the clay to prepare it for the appendage, the piece of clay, so the pot is ready. To one person, the spiritual gift is given to each one of us to give wise advice. Another, the same Spirit, gives a message of special knowledge. The same Spirit gives great faith to another, and to someone else, the Spirit gives the gift of healing. He gives one person the power to perform miracles, another the ability to prophesy. And he gives someone else the ability to discern whether a message is from God or from another spirit. And still another person, he gives the ability to speak in unknown languages, while another is given the ability to interpret what is being said. It's one and only Spirit who distributes these gifts. There. And God alone decides which gift each person should have. So I prepare the clay, much like you and I are prepared. I believe that we're prepared since the creation of the earth. God has prepared you and I for certain gifts, abilities. He prepares us to receive it. And sometimes they're different. They're so different. Even this handle is going to be different from the handle that's on the small picture. These are different method. Maybe it'll work. Let's hope. Clay is very loose. Very soft. Too soft for my liking. First Peter chapter 4, God has given each one of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. God just doesn't have one or two gifts. He has many. And he wants us to use them well to serve one another. Just like a handle on a pot enables pot too soft. I'll need stiffer clay, and I'll do something with this handle. As funny as it looks right now, it allows it to be formed later with a proper rise. Is this the mug? This is the mug. And the interesting thing that Paul says in Romans chapter 11, verse 29, that you and I have to keep remembering that God's gifts and his call can never be withdrawn. I've often wondered about that as a pastor. No, as a Christian. Because God has given me a gift, and I'm wondering, well, is that it, God? And I believe that he has on me a pastor's heart. And no matter whether I'm busy and active with many people or a few, I have a pastor's heart. I've always had a pastor's heart, even before I was a Christian, even before I was in ministry as a young Christian. I continued to have that passion. It was in me. Looked a little better than a lumpy handle like that. Let's see if we can make something work. So God's call can't be withdrawn. He doesn't change. Just like with our church here, he hasn't taken away what we are to do. Don't ask me why I give that little curl there. From getting in trouble. No, the thing is they have to dry, and they have to dry gently and slowly. So then they're prepared. In the drying stage, it's called maturing. Now I'm going to talk a whole lot more about that next time. God adds gifts to our lives for a purpose, so that we can be useful, so that we can pour out and bless others. It's not just about myself. I don't have a gift and a passion to be a pastor so that I can sit at home and feel wonderful about myself. No. It's so that I can serve. So the Son of Man, Jesus stood up and said, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. Well, welcome back. After trimming, life goes through this process, and especially with clay, you can keep working it at this point. As you saw the trimming go on and handles being put on. Some of them are turning out not too bad. The reality is, though, sometimes appendages, gifts, handles, they just don't work. This picture that I put the handle on yesterday, and it was looking kind of rough, and I didn't like the feel of it. It separated. And the reason it separated was the drying process. The handle was so wet, and when it dried, it shrank more than the pot was shrinking. And so the two, as you can see, don't really match up. Kind of the handle wanted to be out there somewhere. It just was not the right fit. Ever feel like it's not the right fit? See, God gives us gifts, but if I go to use it before the right time or try to make it happen, it just doesn't work. But God's a God of good economy. He'll take a piece of pottery, divine potter, earthly potter too, and reuse it. And you look at it and say, oh, I hate to be crushed and made up again, but God speaks in such a way that miraculous things. He spoke and the heavens were made. He speaks and lives are changed. I go through this painful, slow process of making pottery. God speaks, and it happens right away. See, I need to learn. Sometimes I want to look inside, and I'm always curious. What sort of piece this was? This is beyond leather hard. And it's not so bad. And as you can see, walls are relatively consistent. And you're like, oh, you broke a piece of pottery, but you know what? This gets remade into a pot. Add water, and it's back on the wheel. God doesn't give up on you and I. He takes a broken, fragile pot, and he makes something new out of it. Sometimes I wonder about all the pressure we go through if we're not like fragile pots of clay. James chapter 1, verse 2. James says, hey, listen, when troubles come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy, because then your faith is tested and your endurance has a chance to grow. He wants to develop character, so let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you'll be perfect and complete, needing nothing. So I don't mind, in the hands of God, to be remade into something new. Are you ready to be made and transformed into something new for him? I pray so. Hope you can learn from the lesson from the potter's wheel. I pray the lessons from the potter's house will encourage you to serve with what you have and who you are this day. Let me pray for you. Pray that the gifts that you've given us, God, would be strengthened and encouraged in our lives, and that we would not grow weary in our well-doing. Help us, God, to serve you with all our heart, all our soul, and all our strength. Amen. Thanks for joining me on the Potter's House.